Morning, Chris.
Morning, Ben. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? Hello, Brian.
Thank you. Morning, Brian.
So I realise I've been
Good morning,
drafted in.
guys. Sorry, I'm
Um,
not. I'm not dressed yet. I just thought I'd join promptly.
Fair enough. I've been drafted into this by Martin Dodd, and obviously Martin's busy sailing on a boat from Cape Town to Sydney, so he's not even going to get to see it happen in action.
I think he's just getting back, but he'll definitely get to see the recording, so don't worry about that, Ben.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I hope I don't let him down, right? Having him offered my services.
Are you familiar with Zoom and where the screen share settings are?
Yes. Shall we just test that quickly, just to make sure that it actually works?
Yeah.
Let me just
Um,
shift this over here, and then we can hopefully make that work. So I'm hoping is that coming through?
Not yet. So if you've pressed the green
Oh,
button,
sorry. Yeah, no, I'll try that now.
yeah, something's happening. There we go. There are your slides. Perfect.
Okay. And just checking if I move through, that actually does move through.
They do. They
All
do.
right, good start. Do you want me to leave that up there, Chris, or do you want to take it down until we get going?
Yeah, let's take it down for a second, and then we'll come back in the same way later, if that's okay.
That's totally fine.
Um,
Who's first, Chris? I thought John was first, but I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah. Well, here's John, so let's let him in the room. How are you feeling, Craig?
I haven't been to the toilet for 45 minutes, mate. I'm okay at the moment.
Cool. A feeling better would have been plenty.
Well, I'm not yet. I'd be lying to you. I'm not yet, but I think I had a slightly undercooked omelette yesterday. I don't think it's in agree with me.
Morning, John. You okay? You okay, John? You're off mute there.
You're off mute, John, but we still can't hear you.
Nothing yet, John. Ben, with John leaving and rejoining, try and fix his sound. Would you be okay to kick us off?
Yeah, of course. Very happy if that would help.
Lovely.
Do you want me to crack Trey in?
No, I'll give an intro when we start at 8, and we'll go
Oh
from
yeah, true. We've still got 2 minutes to go.
there. Hopefully a flood of people are on their way.
I think, Chris, if it helps, I think the agenda I saw, I think I was actually scheduled to be up first anyway. So if that
That's good with me.
So, Chris, have you managed to do one of these every month throughout the year? Is this the 12th out of 12?
Apart from where we're all in America and
True.
August for the holidays, yes.
Okay, so 10 out of 10.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, 10 out of 10. And the last one of the year.
And a
And do
full
you
day,
all
and a
get,
full day delivered in March, don't forget, Chris.
Indeed, in person, yes.
where does that happen?
London. There's a
Okay.
hotel we go to.
And do you all get over to the US for the MDRT event?
If we qualify and choose to go, yes.
Right, okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, all.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our December morning monthly catch up, our last one of the year, and 10 out of 10, as we are just discussing with Ben. So I would like to say that we have our membership is open. Well, we are able to renew ahead of the start of the tax year. So hopefully everybody's got their emails and have started their application for renewal. And this month, as always, we have a packed agenda. I'm going to start with Ben Peel of Portfolio Matrix, who offers coaching in financial advice. Ben will help us understand the difference between financial coaching and traditional advice and how both approaches can complement one another. Understand the importance of developing skills in empathy, active listening, and emotional intelligence to strengthen client trust and engagement. Learn to identify and address behavioral and emotional biases that can influence decisions. Explore methods to integrate coaching techniques into financial planning practice, including goal setting, reflection, and skill building. Recognize how coaching supports consumer duty requirements by enhancing perceived and demonstrable client value. Build practical techniques for asking powerful questions using the GROW model and to deepen client understanding. And finally, to learn how developing coaching capabilities can future-proof advisory practices in an era of automation and digital disruption. So Ben, welcome to our call this morning. And are you able to start sharing your screen?
Let me see. Tell me if that's working, Chris.
It's coming through perfectly. Lovely.
Great. Well, listen, Chris, thanks for the intro. So firstly, just for those of you who don't know Portfolio Metrics, so we're not a coaching firm, as it were, but we're actually a discretionary investment manager. Just by quick intro, we work with advice firms who want to kind of take the investment side of things off their plate to be able to focus on financial planning. And that can be either kind of off-the-shelf MPS or multi-asset funds or bespoke sets of models for an advice firm. So Martin Dodd, who I think you all know, Martin is one of the firms we have done that sort of bespoke range of models for. So if you've got any questions, ask him. I know he's obviously sailing somewhere in the world, but when he's back, you can ask him about that. I run the distribution side of the business, so anything non-investment sits under me. And really what I'm going to talk to you about today is has derived from the advisor communities that we run. So we run wide sessions across the year, bringing together top quality advisors to share ideas and best practice. And we're there to moderate and find guest speakers. So what I'm going to share with you in the next 25 minutes or so is the key learnings from actually 2 sessions we did on this topic. So let me crack into it. I'm going to show you roughly what we're going to talk about today. And and Chris has kindly talked through all of that for me, so I don't need to get into that in too much detail, but I'll try and give you a combination of kind of what we learned from our guest speakers, plus what we learned from the advisors who were present at these two events. One of them was an advisor roundtable. We do 4 of those a year in London. One of them was our Women in Advice webinars, and we do 2 of those a year. So I'm going to try and just share the key insights from those with you. So let's start with some stats. I think in terms of this, advisors do like this coaching part of the role, right? Even if they haven't necessarily articulated it as such. Okay, so 43% of people say it's the favorite part of their working day. You've got 54% of industry experts saying there's a growing need for this coaching as part of a solution for the advice gap, and as well as just people who are already taking advice. And then I think, again, here, this is what the FCA is saying, is that coaching can address things that potentially like traditional advice can't. So that's some stats from the regulator and the profession and what have you. So let's try and define what coaching actually means. I would argue it sits at the center of those 3 circles. So if you like your Venn diagrams, I think there's an element of therapy about it. I'm sure some of you would acknowledge the fact that you're quite often feel like a therapist for your clients. There's the financial planning bottom left, which you'll all be very familiar with. And then there's that behavioral finance element, which I'll talk to in a little bit. We had some very good insights on that from Vanguard at one of our events. But I think that's really where I see the intersection of those 3 is where I see coaching coming to play. Now, in terms of what I think, to my mind, and the learnings were, the key elements of coaching, probably for 4 things. Firstly, the empowerment side of things, right? i.e., how do you give your clients the ability to develop the necessary skills and behaviors to actually solve some of their problems without always relying on you? And I think if they take ownership, that does lead to sustainable behavioral change. So that's the first thing, the kind of empowerment. The second thing linked into that is the education, the skill building, which goes with that. So if you can teach them about budgeting or saving or practical skills, which they can then use independently, they will certainly appreciate that. The behavioral side of things, we'll talk about this. I think people do often have an emotional relationship with money, right? And we could talk about how to identify that and then how to solve for that, and particularly to how to avoid clients self-sabotaging the plan which you've so carefully built for them. And then goal setting, as you know, obviously understanding their financial situation at the outset is important, but then helping them to set realistic goals, right? Not everyone can have a super yacht. And I think beyond that, it's the ongoing element of advice, as you all know well, to help them keep on track and stay in line with those plans. And that can sometimes mean telling them news they don't want to hear, right? So I think that's what we would say as a starting point, some of the key elements of coaching. Now, in terms of other things here, I think a lot of this is reliant on what I would call emotional intelligence, or some people call it EQ, as opposed to IQ, right? And this is very highly valued by clients. Feeling understood is a powerful human driver. I think that links into the topic of empathy. Right now, I think good coaches are definitely empathic. We wrote a white paper on the value of advice, which has been downloaded by thousands of advisors from all over the world. And the number 1 attribute, which was valued highest by both clients and by advisors, was this topic of empathy, right? So that can't be quantified in pounds or pence, but I think it is still very valued by clients. Then reflection, right? Giving them time actually to think about and come to solutions themselves. Because, you know, again, if you're constantly giving them the answer, they won't actually learn to self-solve. So actually, one of our guest speakers talked about the mantra person before problem, right? I allow them to explore and develop a theme without jumping to the solution, even if you know what the solution is, right? He says, don't solution too early, because if you get clients to think for themselves, and if they leave the room thinking it was their decision, they're far more likely to act on it, right? Rather than you just telling them what they must do. And then the final point is this holistic thing. I'm sure all of you are kind of holistic financial planners, but I think here it's taking that comprehensive view of a client's financial life. Clearly, it is about investments, but actually it's also about what they want to do with the money, ticking off the bucket list, all those type of things. So again, that came out quite a lot in terms of other aspects of coaching. So here's a word cloud. This is what came out. We did one of these in both of the sessions in terms of what does coaching mean to advisors, right? Again, I'll send the slides through to you guys afterwards, so don't worry about sort of trying to write any of this down. But I think, you know, I'll pick out some of the words. Clearly, understanding, we've talked about confidence, we've talked about trust, no doubt, a connection. I think we'll talk about how it actually builds a better connection between you and your clients. Engagement, same thing there. So I think that is where we see coaching adding huge value to both the advice firm's practice, but also to their kind of client relationships. So we then, at these events, we did some surveys to kind of get a sense of where the average advisor is in terms of thinking about coaching. So firstly, do you incorporate coaching? We asked them this at the outset of the session, and 60% of them said, no, we don't. Interestingly, I won't spoil the punchline, but actually when we asked them the same question at the end of the session, that number was materially lower for the no's, which I'll talk about why. Then how valuable is coaching? I think you can see there, what's that, 68, so like 92% think it is valuable in some way, right? I will put, and no one thinks it's completely non-valuable. And then finally, what do the client think about it, right? Do clients want coaching, right? Is that part of financial planning? And again, there was some sort of unsure people there for sure. And then I think, but again, 70% thought that there would be some benefit or value to their clients from that. So I think that's what the stats or the surveys we did with our advisor partners said. So let's try and break this out in terms of between coaching and advising. What's the difference, right? I think this probably boils down to a few things. Firstly, mindset, right? I would say coaching is more developmental, more emotional, whereas I'd say probably advising is more technical, right? And you're directing the client as to what to do. Secondly, in terms of expertise, right? I think, again, there's likely to be more focus on the investment side, on the advising, but I think, again, more around probably that spending, budgeting on the coaching side of things. Interestingly, on the whole regulation and training side of things, like anyone can call themselves a financial coach. As you will know, having done all the exams, no one can call themselves a financial advisor unless they are qualified. And it is also worth saying that coaching is completely unregulated, right? I could set myself up as a financial coach tomorrow, right? There are obviously accreditations and certifications which you can do, but it is unregulated. So be aware of that. I would say in terms of payment, as most of you will probably be aware, advising is still generally an ad valorem, i.e. percentage fees, ongoing, whereas coaching tends to be the different ways of doing it, but it tends to be a fixed fee, right? And then the final difference I would say is how long you have that relationship for. As we all know, the value of advice is about ongoing advice, right? You want to have this for the rest of your life, right? Whereas I would say coaching can often have a defined period, whether that be, a month, 3 months, a year, but generally it will run for a specific period of time before it rolls off. So I think, as one of our guest speakers said, a financial coach helps clients get and stay financially healthy, whereas a financial advisor helps clients get and stay financially wealthy. So I would argue it's important to say here, I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive, right? As per the Venn diagram, I think there's a huge amount of overlap between these two worlds. Okay, so Chris mentioned in the intro, how does this help future-proof your business? I think the first thing I would say is the coaching approach can allow you to cover clients which perhaps wouldn't make commercial sense at the outset, particularly for that next generation who maybe don't have the money yet, but will be inheriting the money. I think that's going to be helpful for that intergenerational wealth transfer. Then you've got this client engagement and retention that came out strongly in the word cloud, which we saw earlier. I think clearly Consumer Duty is pushing advisors to evidence their value. And I would say, again, please, I can pop the link in the chat later, but our value of advice white paper, a huge amount of the things which clients value center around the kind of intangible things, whether it be peace of mind, the gift of time, empathy, a trusted ear. As I said, none of these things can be measured in percentage terms, but it's hugely valued by clients. And then finally, demonstrating value, right? And in a world where, AI is coming and robo-advice has come and failed, I think my view is there's no danger to my mind that the good advisors are going to get replaced by AI. But I think it will help them to cover clients more efficiently and to cover more clients. Right? And again, we've done one of our advisor community sessions on that. And we've got sort of stats there that advisors who are properly embracing this can be covering somewhere between 100 to 150% more clients without increasing the size of their existing team. So I think certainly coaching, building that into it makes you stand out from the crowd. Okay, so how do you integrate coaching? I think there's a few ideas here so that you can have modular content, right? You can pick something specific around budgeting or IHT planning, and you can actually run sessions on that. Then there's the kind of tailored advice. You might have clients who who need something specific to them. They might be disrupting their own financial plans. They might be overgenerous with their children. They might be not following through on the actions which you discuss with them. That's going to require some specific tailored coaching to them. And then the idea, which we have seen some people do, is running parallel businesses. So you start over here with clients who've just taken that coaching service, but then when the time comes, they then shift them into that regulated advice business. Now, again, I don't think you have to run two separate businesses, but that is an idea which exists out there. Okay, now coaching, like it's a somewhat intangible concept. Is it a tough sell to your clients? I'll refer here to a Morningstar report where they said most of the advisors taking on clients, they said the clients came to them with a specific need, right? They wanted, income, they wanted pension advice, right? Or they weren't comfortable handling their own finances, but only 17% of them at the outset said they were looking for financial coaching, right? So this suggests quite a narrow sort of job to be done type mentality when people are taking on advice for the first time. And I also think it's hard for a client to understand the value of coaching before they receive it and from the outside. So it's not something which I would necessarily expect your prospective clients to come to you asking for. But I think the way you position it is key. As one of our advisors who attended said, listen, the way I always set this up with my clients is I say, it's important that I understand what matters to you before I make any recommendations. And that's when you can tease out the kind of the emotional and the coaching elements of this. So I think, intuitively, it might feel like a tough sell, but I think once they're in the flow of it, I think clients will really value it. Okay, so this is just some charging structures for coaching. I won't take too much time on this, but I think some of the people we had people who just were pure financial coaches, so they weren't giving regulated advice. So I think you can price by the hour or blocks of sessions or group coaching. I mean, for context, one advisor who I know that was charging £125 an hour, right? Personally, I don't think selling your time by the hour is the biggest bang for buck, and you all have limited time. So I don't think you actually necessarily need to charge for this separately. I also don't think clients need to be told that they're being coached or therefore that they're paying for that coaching. I think you just build it into that broader holistic financial planning. So I promised you some insights from Vanguard on behavioral coaching. Now, I think, as you all know, there are lots of biases out there. And the two main types is cognitive biases. These are generally easier to correct because they're based on errors of perception or memory or judgment. Emotional biases are unfortunately much harder to correct, right? And I'm going to talk about a few of these in a bit more detail. Now, without terrifying you, there are 91 separate cognitive biases out there, but I'm going to focus on 4 as a starting point. Anchoring, I'll talk about in a bit more detail because I think that's one of the most common ones, and I'm sure you'll all recognize it when I talk to you about it. Framing, this is about individuals making decisions based on the way information is presented to them, right? And that can often lead to bad decisions. Loss aversion, again, I'll dig into in more detail. And then finally, overconfidence. I think a lot of people have this belief, in my mind, inexplicably, about the fact that they can actually time markets and move to cash and all those things. And generally that comes back to bite them, but it's kind of, your role to actually help educate them away from that trend. So that's just 4 examples of cognitive biases. Now, in terms of a bit more detail on anchoring, I'm sure you'll be familiar with this. I don't know if you can actually see my mouse, but basically the point is, so they invest down here and up here, they're delighted. Okay, and then the market's correct, and then they'll obviously be sad down here, and then the markets rally again, and then they basically anchor at this top point here. Markets fall again. Now, at exactly the point where previously they were delighted, they're now despairing, right? And that is basically because, as you will all know very well, the client just anchors to the last highest point of their investments, right? So we're taking them through that kind of wave cycle, I think, is quite hard, right? But how do you counteract that? I think we have it with 3 ways. Obviously, you've got to coach them to ignore the market noise. As you know, journalists love negative headlines, right? Billions wiped off the FTSE plummets 3%. I think 2 stories here. 1, it's not just about the FTSE. And 2, you never see the headlines about billions being wiped back on when the markets recover. So I think just teach them to ignore that noise. The second thing is to keep the numbers in context, right? The example I always give, if a client invests £100,000 with you, right, and that grows to £200,000, right, so they feel very happy, then they anchor at 200 grand, market's correct 10%, we're now back at £180,000, they're like, I've lost £20,000. No, you actually made 80, but you need to be able to kind of give them that audit trail to actually prove. And so basically, and these are completely natural things, but I think it needs a bit of a careful steer to help them through that. And then finally, obviously, long term, unless they need the money tomorrow and all of the money tomorrow, you're building a long-term financial plan for them. If that plan is still on track, even if there is a market correction, help them to look through that. So that's anchoring. loss aversion. I'm going to give you two analogies. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept. This is all about prospect theory and about people feeling losses more keenly. So the first example, you walk out of your office after this meeting and you find 50 quid on the floor and you are absolutely delighted. You pop it in your pocket, happy days, and then you go to a meeting and you get to the meeting and you go in your pocket and now the 50 quid's gone. You are twice as sad about losing the 50 quid as you are about finding it, right? That is just basic human psychology. And that's what your clients are feeling, right? They don't ever thank you, as I'm sure you know, for the positive returns, but as soon as the negative returns start coming through, they'll be straight on the phone. I think give that analogy to them, and that is just something which we can't unfortunately change. That is just human psychology. And the second analogy I like to give is around turbulence, right? Clearly, when you're on a plane and you go through a big patch of turbulence, it is terrifying. And yet sometimes you think you're going to die. But in 99.99% of times, you get through the turbulence, you land, and you have a nice holiday. Everyone lives happily ever after. And this, I think, is a good analogy for clients about market corrections. Yes, it feels deeply unpleasant. Yes, we'd rather not go through it. But in almost all cases, it ends fine. So I think the turbulence analogy can work quite well with people when we're framing this loss aversion story. Okay, so how do we counter this loss aversion? The three E's, I think, are the answer. First one is, again, our old friend empathy. It's really important to show understanding of how they're feeling. Even if you know the right thing is for them to stay invested, you must at least acknowledge how they're feeling, right? The second thing is evidence. Build that audit trail. Do you remember last time you wanted to move to cash and I didn't let you, and then the markets rallied, and this is how much you had left on the table? And we've had lots of recent examples about that. You know, we actually have a system, a feature in our technology which shows this, basically looking back at all the recent market corrections, how much was the drawdown for their portfolio, but also how long it took to recover. And the classic example of that recently this year was obviously the Trump fun and games back in April, right? Clearly, markets sold off a lot in a short space of time, but they also snapped back very hard. So just give them that audit trail, and over time, you'll coach them out of that behavior. And then finally, explanation, right? We talk here about the common reaction from clients about loss aversion is to hold too much cash, but you need to explain to them that if they hold too much cash, they are very unlikely to meet their financial goals, particularly with inflation eroding it. So empathy, evidence, and explanation is our way to get through that loss aversion. Okay, so I think I have, Chris, tell me about 5 minutes left. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Cool. Right. I'll rattle through then. Just these are some of the guest speakers we had at the two events. And I'll just give you the key ones, points from each. This is Chris Budd. If you know him, he used to be an advisor. He sold his advice business via an EOT. He's all about well-being. He's all about focus on well-being rather than wealth. And he's got a great stat about, you know, the system one brain and how clients think about money. And basically, they think differently about their future self versus their current self. So if you're asking them to save into a pension for when 20, 30 years out, it feels like they're giving money away to a stranger. So he's got some more details on that. And again, I can pop in the chat once I've finished the links to the summaries of these events, which has more details on that. So Chris is about financial well-being. This is a guy called Jan Bowen Nielsen. He runs a firm purely focused on coaching of financial advisors to help bring coaching into their practice. His two key takeaways are you've got to ask the right questions and you have to listen, right? And basically he says staying silent is key, right? It can feel uncomfortable. We're all programmed to fill the silence, but he says if you stay silent, that's when the real nuggets really surface, right? The most impactful insights emerge in silence. And he also encourages advisors to go deeper. Ask them the question, listen to their answer, and then go deeper. Tell me more about that, right? Ask the same question in a different way, because you really got to dig. There's generally multiple layers of a human psychology in terms of to understand what really matters to them. So that's Jan. This lady called Catherine Morgan, she is a financial coach. She's very much focused on the emotional relationship people have with money. And she generally says there are 5 money types, and she talks about the impulsive, the architect, the enabler, the pacifist, and one other. Once you understand which of those 5 your client is, you can actually then basically tailor your financial planning exactly for them. And she's also got on her website a list of 59 questions, quite a random number, to ask clients to help start teasing out what type of relationship they have with money. So that's Catherine. This is a lady called Rosanna. She is the secret coach. And her point here is the regulator is very focused on technical skills, right? But actually those interpersonal skills, the empathy doesn't really get picked up on by the regulator. So in her view, in order to build trust with your clients, it's about obviously credibility, knowing what you're talking about, reliability, doing what you say you're going to do, and then that human connection. She says if you can get all those three, you're in great shape. She also talked about the GROW model, right, in terms of it's an acronym to actually use in your coaching. The G stands for goals. What does the client want? The R stands for reality. Actually, what is happening? Do those goals look realistic? The O is for options. What could they do at this point in time? And then the W is for will. That's the getting the commitment as to what will they do post the meeting. So the GROW model, again, I can send, there's details on that at the back of the presentation. And then this chap is a guy called Ian Richards. He's a financial planner. He runs a business called Work to Live. And he's, again, hyper focused on listening, right? He says there's 5 levels of listening, right? And the first 3 are unfortunately interrupting, hijacking, and solutioning. We talked about not solutioning too earlier. He says the ones you want to aim for is level 4 and 5, which is active listening and attentive listening, right? And unfortunately, the survey says that financial advisors tend to be worse than average listeners because they're so primed to go to the solution and to show their expertise. And so again, his big focus is on asking the right questions. So he says, don't ask why questions because it forces the client to justify themselves. He says, don't ask closed questions because there's no chance to dig deeper. But he did like a couple of good examples, what makes now the right time to have this meeting? His other one is, how does that make you feel? Right. So those are 2 questions he uses in almost every meeting. So again, there's more detail from Ian in the presentation. And then I think to round it out, this is my question. And I use this question in almost every meeting I do. I always use it in the first meeting I do with a prospect firm. I use it in a catch up with our existing partners, and I'll use it in interviews. And my question is, what else should I have asked? Now, it's a bit of a weird question, and I will warn you, it sometimes freaks people out because they sort of look like a rabbit in the headlights, but you must give them time, right? And I mean 10 seconds, count to 10 in your head slowly, because what's happening during those 10 seconds, they're like, that's a bit of a weird question. Why did Ben ask me that question? Actually, that's quite an interesting question. What else should he have asked me? Actually, there is that one thing I haven't told him, right? And as they're working through that process, if you interrupt and fill the silence too early, you'll never get that nugget. So it kind of really digs into what Jan Burr Nielsen said about giving them the silence and time to let their thoughts catch up. But almost always the answer I get to that question is probably the most interesting thing I get in a meeting. So what else should I have asked? So I think that is me. I think hopefully, Chris, I kept to the brief of being done in 25 minutes. So I'll stop sharing. Happy to take any questions people have. As I said, I'll pop a couple of things in the chat whilst you guys go on with the rest of the meeting in terms of that white paper and the links to the recaps from those events you can see in more detail. But happy to take any questions or feedback now.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ben. That reminds me of the £50 note that I lost last month, and it still hurts now. 91 cognitive biases. That is amazing. And also, you mentioned a white paper at the top of your talk. Could you share that with me directly? I can share that on the email afterwards with the recording of the session as well, please.
Yep, of course, no problems.
And also, Ben, what should I have asked? What else should I have asked?
That's a good question. I mean, I think it probably is, like, should you be charging more for incorporating coaching into your practice? I think there was mixed views on that one. I think on fees in general, we've run another one of our advisors sessions on that one. And I think it was really interesting. My strong contention is that advisors should have more confidence in their fees and should be increasing their fees, which I think is quite a controversial opinion. But in that session we surveyed all the people who were dialed into the webinar, and I was quite surprised that this was kind of in the kind of period post-COVID when everyone's operating costs had gone through the roof. I was actually pleasantly surprised that about half of them had increased their fees. I expected that to be lower than that. And then I asked that half, I said, okay, and how many of you have lost any clients off the back of that? And the answer was it was 0.5% of people had lost. And often those are the clients they didn't want to actually have anyway. So I think, again, whether you use it to justify increasing fees, I don't know. But yeah, that would be perhaps what you should have asked, Chris.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Ben. I am now going to introduce John Whitehead of Cashflow Ninja. John works with individuals and businesses to identify, track, and ultimately illustrate key lifestyle and financial decisions to show what impact those decisions may have on future plans and aspirations. And John helps you to create a bespoke route map based on key life stages and events, demonstrate the impact of professional advice on your clients' wealth and objectives, and provide a robust platform to enhance every annual review. Cash flow modeling allows you to take a peek into a possible future based on a number of given facts that are true today and with regular checkups, which may lead to further advice from your advisors, which include accountants as well as IFAs, and helping you realize your goals. So, John, are you able to start your screen share for about 20 minutes, please?
Absolutely. First of all, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Fantastic. Can I just say Microsoft can go suck a biscuit? Every time I need to use something, all of a sudden it says you're going to have to spend the next 20 minutes waiting for it to update, right? Just at the wrong point. Now, Chris, firstly, thank you for that introduction. I have to say, listening to that, I need to change that because that made me sound incredibly boring. And I like to think I'm not. But I've got 20 minutes. So hopefully today I can get across maybe 3 or 4 things that I found have worked really, really well for me in the space that I occupy. I spend the majority of my time building and presenting cash flow models for planners who are time poor, technology averse. Some of them are just lazy, but it gives me the opportunity to help them focus on the things that they're really good at whilst building a model that means something to the client. And the first thing, just before I share in fact, I'll share the front page just so you can get a feel. You bear with me a second. There's, I have done this sort of stuff before, you know. It might not seem like it, but here we go. Let's share my screen. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. This is me. Does that come up, Chris? Yeah, excellent. Yeah. So first of all, for anybody who thinks it's a little bit pretentious to be called the Cash Flow Ninja, I didn't give myself that name. It was given to me by a few planners that I've worked with, and I kind of thought it sounds a little bit more interesting than John Whitehead. So I've stuck with it, and I'm quite a fan of Japanese ninja films, so it works quite well for me. In terms of the first thing that I would say is with cash flow modeling, I always think it's great to start with an anecdote. And my anecdote for you this morning is, I don't know if you can see this watch. Now, you may or may not like a nice watch. This is not a Rolex. It's not a Patek Philippe. I would love a Patek Philippe. It's not a Breitling. It's not any of those things. This is something called a Jacques Le Mans. Now, this watch is around about 350 to 400 pounds, and it can swim apparently to 20 atmospheres, 200 meters, way beyond what I can do. But the reason that this watch has got some resonance for me is this watch was given to me on my birthday in September by my brother and sister-in-law, who were on holiday with my wife and I in Egypt. This is September just gone, for the 4th time since January last year. Now, this watch is representative of where they are. I built them a cash flow model 5 or 6 years ago, and they were under the great belief that they might be able to have the odd holiday a year and see out their lives. They sold their house. They didn't have much in pension funds. They banked the money. They live in an over 55s. You can tell I'm in that age bracket. 2-bedroom apartment, but they thought they could only have one holiday a year. And in fact, that holiday in September was the 8th time we've been away with them since January last year, because in building their cash flow model, I was able to, working with a very, very good planner, show them that their glass ceiling, their limiting belief, we could break through it and they could actually enjoy a really nice holiday lifestyle without it really causing too much damage or impact to their longer term enjoyment of life. So that watch to me is not just our watch, it is a lifestyle choice and it's a lifestyle story. And whenever I'm speaking to on behalf of the planner, if I'm speaking to any client, one of the first things I will do is I will talk to them about even my own journey. I mean, I'm 56 years of age. I built my model 10 years ago. And like everybody else, because we're busy, I have one holiday a year. And then since January last year to today, I've had 14 holidays and bought a really stupid car. Now, that's not for me to sit here and go, well, hey, look at me. I'm not Rockefeller. I just happen to have a decent retirement account. But 10 years ago, I planned to do exactly that. That in 2024, I would start to live my best life. I'd be semi-retired. I've done Zooms. I still do take my laptop with me. I've done Zooms to clients from Egypt, Turkey, Cyprus, Portugal. Why? Because I can. And it actually creates quite a nice environment to chat to a client when you sat there in your t-shirt saying, listen, I'm going to come inside for an hour because the air conditioning is going to help me out. But there's a beer by the pool. So if we can crack on and get this done, that'd be fantastic. Right? Because that's important, because I'm living my plan. And that's really important when you're talking to clients about cash flow modeling. I also want to pick up, again, just before I show a couple of slides, on some of the great things that Ben has just said, because I think it ties in really, really nice to what I do in cash flow modeling terms. 17% of people said they wanted financial coaching. The great thing about humans is, and we are humans, most of us, I imagine, is that we don't know what we don't know until we find out we don't know it. So in terms of taking people through a cash flow model or a lifestyle illustration, is that you are providing financial coaching within that process. You're helping them understand a little bit more about the whole life journey and everything else. So it works quite well in cash flow modeling terms. Ignoring the market noise was one of the things that Ben said. And the work that I've done with clients over the years is I talk about focus on the plan, not the performance. There are going to be market corrections. There are going to be bounce backs. If you all remember when COVID hit, I think my pension lost £100,000 in 3 months. Right, and then you go, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then it recovered 170 in the following 7 months. But if I'd have just kept with my plan, that smooths it all out. If you use, cautious and careful assumptions. Too much cash, again, cash flow modeling demonstrates that corrosive effect of inflation and the impact that can have on a longer term strategy. The going deeper, I like to say to people, how did you arrive at that particular figure? I mean, I'm not averse to the word why, by the way. Some might see that as a challenging question, but if somebody says to me, I'm going to retire at 60, I go, why did you choose 60? Why not 59? Why not 61? I want to understand what's behind that particular decision before I start thinking about what the plan's going to move on to. Cash flow could control the pace. And one thing, that 10 seconds, ask a question and wait 10 seconds. Now, you might think me old school, but I used to teach and coach a technique. Was if there's a specific question that you want an answer to, ask the question and put your pen down. And do not open your mouth again until you pick your pen up. Now, that physical trigger actually works remarkably well for people who feel like jumping in or whatever. They're just energetic and they want to carry on. Ask a question, put your pen down, wait until you've got the answer. Use the word so, just in case we're not getting it, and then pick your pen up. So, anecdotal stories, point number 1. I wish I'd have started my timer on my clock. I forgot to. Never mind. Right. So, I want to just quickly cover off some common questions because I think this is important. Which is the best software? Well, to quote Vin Diesel, that thespian powerhouse of an actor from Fast and Furious, it's not about the car, it's all about the driver. All right, the software is just a donkey. All it does is it captures the information. It's how you utilize it with your client. It's how you communicate what it's saying across to them. So I use Voyant quite a lot. I've just been given a free license for FinCalc. I think they want me to sell a few FinCalc licenses. Nothing wrong with that. I've had CashCalc. I've used Truth, IO, all of these different things. Voyant just happens to be very stable and solid, so I kind of like that. Everyone's got their own opinion, by the way. Who should I build them for? It's not for everyone. Yes, it is. But therein lies a logistical issue. You're busy, so you have to focus on certain client sets beforehand. But I've built them for 20-odd-year-olds right the way through to 80-year-olds. Everybody can benefit from a cash flow model or lifestyle illustration. Unrealistic asset values at the end. If you think it's wrong, trust me, you're right. I did have a client that I was working with once. He rang me up and said, John, I've built a model and I want you to focus on these 2 words, by the way. I think. He said, I think it's wrong. And the net asset value at the end was £97.5 trillion. And I went, you think? No, you don't, clearly. And basically what he'd done is he'd got this absolute truth. There was a commercial property in the Congo of all places, and instead of putting a 0.5% growth rate, he put a 50% growth rate. He didn't put the decimal point in. So of course I just said to him, well, you can buy the Congo and the neighboring country if you like. Not that I would. The point is, if you think it's wrong, you're right. Walk away, go and do something else, microwave the cat. Don't do that, by the way. I've got cats. Go and do something different. And when you come back to it, sometimes the error becomes painfully clear. But if you're in the weeds, get out of them. Just go and make a brew. Just choose to do something else. It's better if you can import client data. Lots of software does that now. Controversial statement. 100% of import functions fail miserably. Why? Because the data has to be in the right box in the back office system. And quite often the import doesn't import all data. So whether that's, the minutiae of a mortgage or of a protection policy. So you can spend longer checking it than if you'd have just put the information in yourself. That's a personal choice. I build all mine from scratch. Can I charge my client for the model? Absolutely. Yes, you can. I know people who charge 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2.5. Depends on your model. But the one thing that always frustrates me about this profession, and it is a profession, it's not an industry, annoys me, it's a profession, is that you can end up doing a lot of work with a client. They say, thank you very much. And then they just leave. And you've done a load of work and you've not got paid for it. If you have a charging structure where you charge for the cash flow model, they walk away with something, you've been paid. If they don't go and do some business with you, great. If they do, then you discount that off anything you earn. Everybody wins. It's way too complicated. Yeah, so is the amp I've got in my living room that's got a manual this thick. I never read any of it. I just pressed loads of buttons until the sound came out. Everything's complicated until you've practiced and played with it a lot, right? So if you're going to do it, and if you are doing it, fantastic. If you're going to do it, though, make sure you spend at least half an hour a week with a play model just to keep yourself up to speed with all the bits and bobs and the buttons and the boxes and so on, because it will become frustrating otherwise. And then you'll think, it's a waste of my time. And it becomes like an expensive gym membership. You don't want you take in January and say, yes, I'm going to go, this is the year I'm going to do it. And then in September, you realize you've been paying £150 a month for something you've not used. Don't do that either. Stochastic versus deterministic. I could spend all day on this debate and this discussion. I asked an economics professor whether stochastic was better than deterministic, and his answer was stochastic modeling would have predicted the 2008 market crash once every 4,000 years. Fantastic, right? It doesn't matter. No cash flow model has ever come true, right? But that's why every year you update it, so the gap between the model and reality starts to narrow. Mine is a lot more robust now, and I'm 10 years into mine. So the first model is the taster. It's the pin in the ground zero. And then from that, you build that long-term strategy and you maintain it. Not about the data. Well, of course, it's about data. We need data, but it's all about creating a very personalized story. So let me give you an example. I want clients to be involved in authoring their own model, because if they do, they own it. So even if I've got bang up to date data, I'll make a mistake. I might put a value in that's slightly wrong, or I'll name an asset slightly wrong. Because what's going to happen is the client's going to correct me. And in my little brain, my brain goes, got you, because now you own it. And that small act of them changing or asking for something to be changed changes the dynamic, because they now are a part owner of their own model. To start with, they're going to be shown something, but I want to draw them into the world so that, and I now have lots of planners. Their clients phone up before their annual review to say, well, I want to update my model. When are we getting booked in? So it helps with that whole process of encouraging clients to be involved in their own journey at a deeper, more emotional level. And it's about theatre, right? Have a bit of fun with it. I like to get clients laughing, because let's face it, I've been in financial services for 30 odd years, and most of it's pretty damn boring, right? We're exciting people, I can tell just by looking at all your faces, but it's pretty damn boring. So let's make it a little bit more interesting. So I get my clients laughing and joking. I presented yesterday, and the planner said they're actually thinking, Sarah, she watches Dream Home Overseas, what is it? A Place in the Sun, and she's after this dream overseas property. So I actually said, right, let's build one in, and I put Dream Place in the Sun, and she just started laughing. She went, you actually typed Dream Place in the Sun, and I went, well, what would you call it? She went, Dream Place in the Sun. I went, there you go, it's your model, isn't it? Let's call it what you want. Excuse my French. One client, in fact, this has happened more than once. I've actually put a line in the model for extra spend called Shits and Giggles. Right? Why? Because they wanted it in there and it made them smile. So use their language, use whatever makes them happy and excited. Now, I use this phrase nearly every time. The accumulation has no value. Accumulation of wealth has no value unless you exchange it for something. Do you want to die the richest person in the graveyard? If you do, you're a muppet, right? There's a book out there, isn't there, at the moment that says die with zero. Yeah. The thing with wealth is cash flow modeling can demonstrate how great you are at making people wealthier. Well, that's a fail, isn't it? Because what we should see is accumulation, decumulation, die. Leave whatever's behind. I got a bag of rusty spanners when my parents died. So, if you happen to leave them a house and a few £1,000s, well, everybody wins. Or alternatively, you could give with a warm hand rather than a cold hand. So in the model, it might be that you're able to give them money and you can enjoy their enjoyment of your gift while you're warm and alive. So think about, are you just making people richer? And look, I'm using a broad brush approach here. Craig quite kindly told me beforehand, cream of the cream. So you're doing a lot of the great stuff already. And I'm already actually working with a few of your MDRT colleagues and helping them build their plans. Okay. Now, it's difficult to do on here, but if I was to ask a genuine question, and I mean absolutely genuine, hands up if you really love maths, right? Yeah, Craig does. Now, I asked that room at a PFS in London, and let's say there were 300 people in the room, and I reckon 20 people put their hand up. Now, you think about that. In a room of 300 highly trained professionals, this is chartered status, 20 people enjoyed maths. Now, what are the chances that you're presenting to a couple that both of them love maths? Right? That's no hope and Bob hope. Yeah? There's literally zero chance that both people are going to love maths. And yet, we've got lots of data. We have lots of numbers. Now, I'm a nerd. And if you show me that, I am as happy as Larry. Show me that all day long. I love numbers. I love a good spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets from chartered accountants because they always get them wrong, right? Because they're all a bit arrogant. But I love a good spreadsheet. Now, this is true. If you show that to my wife, remember, you've come to my house. If you show that to my wife, you need to be wearing a stab vest, right? That does not engage my wife on any level whatsoever. Now, I've been with my wife in February 38 years. Thank you very much. I'm not sure that she would appreciate that on her side, but let's see how we get on. Now, I already sleep with one eye open. I am not about to start sleeping with both eyes open. Now, might think your plan is incredible, and I could spend time explaining to my wife that this is the plan, but my wife's an emotion-driven character. Trust me, right? So all she's going to say to me is, well, Chris was lovely. Chris didn't talk to me. So choose a different language. I don't mean buy a cruise ship, by the way. They're quite expensive. I looked into it. But it might be going on cruises and holidays. And my wife loves the sunshine and we love going on holidays and so on. And it gives us something to look forward. Buy a stupid car. Now, that actually genuinely was on one of my models for me to buy. Second hand, by the way. I'm not Rockefeller. I didn't buy it in the end because my wife's hips aren't great and she said she wouldn't be able to get in and out of it. What a way to kill someone's dreams. But I did buy another car. House, your dream home, your forever home, or moving closer to your children. Oh, legacy planning, great idea. intergenerational planning, moving it into near the seaside, moving to the countryside, all of those sorts of things. Yes, you can tell I've had a tough few years. This was my 50th birthday. That is the first of my 3 grandchildren. My daughter did say it was okay to use the image, just in case anyone's worried, right? So this is Poppy, princess. I've got Penny, princess number 2. Don't leave any sharp objects near her. And then I've got Henry number 3, who is Charles Manson reincarnated, right? Now, the thing is, in my models, it's doing things for the grandchildren. Now that resonates with my wife on a very, very deep emotional level. You know, making sure that we take them on holiday, or don't go near Build-A-Bear, by the way. It's incredibly expensive, particularly when you've got 3 grandkids in tow. And then it could be later life care. The point is, the first bit, the numbers, excites me and I like it. That's rare. The second bit engages both of us. Happy wife, happy life, right? Or whatever terminology you want to use. It's important to engage in an imagery, and you put lines in your model. And I have a line in my model that says, it actually said Maserati and European Odyssey, because I was going to buy the Maserati, spend 3 months driving my wife around Italy. And I thought, if I rock up in a Maserati, I'm bound to get a free pizza or wine somewhere. It's a little baby Ferrari. In the end, I bought a different car, but I've been on lots of holidays. So we're living our plan, which is really, really important. So, anecdotal story. Number 1, make sure you've got that in your mind. Number 2, communicate in a different language, because that's going to engage more of your clients on a deeper level. I could rewind it a little bit, say, make sure you get the theatre and everything else. That's really important. And then the power of words. These are things I do say to a client, right? I want you to enjoy this. It shouldn't feel like homework. If you start bleeding from the eyes and ears, it's gone terribly wrong. Don't think you have to take lots of notes. You're going to get a copy of the report. I want you to focus on your journey, your enjoyment, and playing with the model, right? Really, really important. Now, this is going to come true because life will get in the way of the plan. But we're going to revisit this every year or every life event, whichever comes first, to make sure that we're on track. Like a good old traditional British hedge. When you cut it, it looks fantastic. It's in shape. It's nice. If you maintain it, it keeps its shape. If you leave it, as my neighbours keep pointing out to me, it turns into a mess. So you need to stay on top of it. The route map, not a destination or a rope in a blizzard. The plan is the rope. Life is the blizzard, and you are the tether that brings them back to the rope. Because life is going to take them off. The world is going to take them off. Market corrections and Ukraine and the orange presidents and all of that sort of weird stuff. Rachel Reeves bringing pensions in for IHT. What a lovely lady. All the plans I've built for the last 10 years are now wrong. Brilliant, right? But let's bring them back with using the model. I use the word corrosive effect inflation. I used to use the impact of inflation. The word corrosive psychologically is a corrosive word. So it actually has more power. So I tend to use the word corrosive. Surplus income. Every model has got surplus income. Yeah, when they're working, they give you your expenses. I've got 30 grand a year left over, and you go, that's rubbish, right? Because the client will tell you, I haven't got 30 grand a year left. I go, I know you haven't. That's because your expenses, you've got them wrong, right? Now, here's a phrase to keep in your back pocket. Expenses are a cash flow killer. If you get them wrong, your model's a waste of time. Now, clients, the number of plans I've seen that clients going to spend £4,000 a month every month for the rest of their life means the question hasn't been asked. So really focus in on the expenditure, because pre-retirement, it doesn't really matter because there's normally a surplus income. Post-retirement, if you got the figure wrong, they're going to be living a lifestyle that they never wanted. It's either too much, too little, too whatever. So for me, what I say to clients is, there's a surplus income. I've spent all of that on biscuits and Malbec. They laugh. They go, I don't like Malbec. And I'll say, what do you like? They go, Chardonnay. And I go, oh, where did you make that? Have you ever thought of visiting a winery? Should we put that in your plan? All of those things help with the flow. I call these the live your best life years. I hear phrases like go years, go slow years, no-go years. Not a big fan of that. I call it living your best life years. Then I call it moments and memories. And then I say to people, this is where you die. There's a little tombstone in the model. But I think that's really important that we just focus on, can we get you your best life for as long as you're physically able to do so? And I always say to people later in the model, Shakira will tell you the hips don't lie, cue giggles and laughter and smiles. But human physiology dictates that the older you get, the less you can do. God's punishment for getting old. You sleep less, you eat less, you do less, right? It's a reminder that at some point you need to jog on, right? But in the model, it's where you start talking about stepping down the expenditure so you can build more into the good life bit and then start to slow down a bit later in life. So that kind of energy in the model, big energy while you've got the time to do it and the health to do it. And then guess what? Sit back, sit in your chair, remember all the great things you did. Hopefully that you did. Because if you didn't, you wasted your life. And I say this to people, don't waste your life. Let's build a plan for you to celebrate everything that you've worked for over the last 30 or 40 years and then slow down. Now, what I don't know, Chris, is I've talked quite fast. I appreciate that. Is am I on track? Have I exceeded? Am I okay? Where am I up to?
Have another minute or two, mate.
I have another minute or two. So, and are you bothered? Now I see a lot of so-called experts on LinkedIn, right? You say financial independence, so long as your models, depending on the color of the model, in void it's blue. If it's blue all the way, it means until age 100, you've got all the stuff that satisfies all of your requirements. That's financial independence. That is utter rubbish in my world, right? Because does that mean that if your model is not blue from age 92, you're not financially independent? No, of course it doesn't. My parents died in their 60s. So by that account, I've got about 3 weeks left, right? It all depends on your family's history, your own perception of reality. So for me, if a model runs out at 92, I'll just say, are you bothered? Does that worry you? Right? Now, if it runs out at 72, that's a different question because there's no stability in a model that runs out at 72 because we're running out at 72. At 92, it should still be relatively stable at 80, 85. But don't put your own, well, you can put your own views onto it, but listen, that whole concept of listening deeply, carefully, and everything else. I never get worried about a plan that's got red in it, right? I always say to people, it's blue's good, red's not so good, but it doesn't mean it's a disaster. So, let's see what we can do to fix it. That's part of the strategy. But I want to bring in more enjoyment, more life enjoyment. So are you bothered? And I always do a what if, time dependent, but I will always do a what if where I will say to a client, let's break your plan, right? If it's blue all the way and they're spending 40 grand a year, I'll say, well, let's turn that into 40 grand, some extra holidays, some one-offs, Costa Rica, Machu Picchu, if you want to eat guinea pigs, whatever it is, all of these crazy things, and let's run your model out and let's burn through it. And we can then work back, and somewhere in between the two is where your life should land. So don't be scared of breaking a model. I do it deliberately. Let's throw more spending. Let's stick another 20 grand a year in. And then I might say, why 20? Why not 19? Why not 21? Right? How did you arrive at that figure? Push the boundaries and ask just that few extra questions, but challenge your client to break their own model because then they're not scared of it breaking. That fear factor's gone. And then you can get into the following year and revisit the models and revisit the plans. And that, in a very fast and loud and Mancunian, so maybe you only understood part of it, that Mancunian twang, is my world of cash flow modeling. And it's proved and it's helped secure quite a lot of business over the last few years. And, final thing I will say is, look, if you just want a sounding board or you've got something that you like to ask a question about anything, just reach out. I tend to work on the basis that if you give a little, you get a little. I went and did the PFS conferences and I met Craig, and Craig was incredibly nice and invited me on here, and Chris has been lovely, persevering with me in my failures this morning. Good luck with your journeys. Have a fantastic Christmas and New Year, and reach out, please, if you feel there's anything that, this old grizzled old Mancunian can help you with.
Lovely. Thank you very, very much, John. Well done. And very quickly, when I move over to Toby and a bit more of myself to talk about the MDRT Academy. So Toby, are you around?
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, mate. So let's talk about the academy. Tell me more.
Let me just share my screen 1 second. I'll just put a little document up there. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, something's coming through. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, excellent. So very quickly, because I know we're a bit short of time, so I'll just run through this, but just a little bit of information on the MDRT Academy. So the MDRT Academy, for those that don't know, is for people that are not MDRT members. So this might be for advisors within your firms or people that are on the call that aren't currently MDRT members. But basically, the MDRT Academy was created with one purpose, basically to help advisors build sustainable, repeatable success, designed for advisors who want proven frameworks, accountability, and world-class learning to elevate their business and the mindset to MDRT standards. Now, just 5 key points on the MDRT Academy. So, number one, it's MDRT quality learning that actually drives growth. So members gain access to the same caliber of content that MDRT is known for, whether it's videos, podcasts, articles, webcasts, or webinars, sorry, and performance guides drawn from the top producers worldwide. So it's practical, implementable, and focused on learning, practicing, and measuring performance, not just consuming information. And the results speak for themselves. 96% of Academy members, Academy graduates, sorry, said that they learned best practices that helped them grow. And then 77% went on to become repeat MDRT members. Number 2, you get access to world-class events and mentoring. So members can attend MDRT members at meetings. You don't have to be a full MDRT member. Being an Academy member allows you access to the MDRT meetings, whether it's the annual meeting, which is always held in a different city throughout the US or Canada, or the global conference, which is held in a different country or city throughout Asia and Australia. And these meetings give you a fantastic opportunity to really experience the MDRT community firsthand, which is access to all the advisors throughout the world, top producers. It's not going to give you product knowledge. You can get that any day of the week on lots of different websites throughout the UK. But what it will teach you is all the soft skills that help make you become an even better advisor as well. You also have one-on-one opportunities to be mentored by existing MDRT members, so providing guidance, accountability, and real-life insights to help accelerate progress. Number 3, tools that you get access to tools that build consistency and momentum. So the Academy includes goal setting and goal tracking tools. Goal tracking tools, not gold tracking tools, that help advisors stay on track daily. And this is done via the Academy website or the MDRT Academy app. And it also equips members with 8 critical mindsets of success. More information on that you can find on the MDRT Academy website, which I will pop in the chat along with a couple of documents. But those mindsets of success to really help advisors build the resilience, discipline, and habits needed to overcome challenges and maintain consistent production. Number 4, you get meaningful, measurable results. So the Academy helps advisors sharpen the skills in marketing, client service, business management, personal development, and members really do see growth in their client base, the network, their overall production levels, and walk away better prepared to navigate the challenges and hit their goals. And the final point is number 5. It's accessible, global, and extremely easy to join. So membership is open year-round and available in multiple languages, including English, Spanish, Chinese. For 2026, so the membership dues are $300. So in today's terms, that's about £220. So making it a very highly cost-effective development resource. So you can join throughout the year. Fees are just prorated depending on what point throughout the membership year you join. But it gives you a good opportunity now to have a nice break over Christmas, speak to other advisors within your company that perhaps aren't MDRT members or perhaps not MDRT members on this call. Have a nice break over Christmas, come and join in the new year, and you've got a full 12 months of membership for just about £220. And you'll really see the benefits there. So we're just slightly overrunning. So that was really a whistle-stop tour. So I want to pass it back to Chris now, who was an Academy member, just to get his insights on how the Academy has helped him become an MDRT member and maintain membership ever since.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Toby. Yes, I was an Academy member and my mentor was our very own Colin Brown. It was a great place, great opportunity to learn and pick up outside insight very early on for me. And I think one of the biggest wins, apart from meeting Carla and being a mentor from her, was being able to attend the conference in America with half the level of qualification as the benchmark. So that was fantastic. The Academy is also looking for more mentors as well as mentees. And if you're able to give something back, this is a great way to do that. But let's give you guys all back the rest of your morning. Thank you very much, Toby, John, and Ben, and look forward to seeing you guys in January. Don't forget to register. Our register for MDRT is available. And all the best. Have a great festive period. Take care, guys.
Here's all.